This 7-year-old girl, Charlie, is describing her last moments with her mother, Kelly Clayton, who was clubbed to death.
There's blood all over. She's been dragged. Blood on the wall. Blood with a hole in the wall, looks like a face plant into the wall.
On the night of September 29, 2015, Steuben County witnessed the dawn of horrors it had never faced before.
We're gonna need all investigators. Homicide.
There were no clues, no murder weapon, and no clear answers. But the most unexpected witness of the crime, a 7-year-old girl, would reveal a horrifying secret that would change everything.
Could have been my dad, but he looked like my dad.
Help me, my wife is dead.
Is she breathing at all? Nothing?
No, trust me.
Okay, is she beyond CPR?
Yes. Trust me, when I'm here with my kids, you'll see what I did here.
How long has she been down?
I don't know, I just got home.
We'll get help to you as quick as we can.
On September 28, 2018, just after midnight, a nightmare began to unfold. There was no prior criminal history at this residence, but something about the tone of the call set Detective Dean Swan of Steuben County on edge.
2-2, I'm on Whiskey Creek, almost to get in now.
What they did not know was that within an hour, the entire county would be pulled at the scene they were heading to.
What's going on?
I'm the neighbor.
Okay.
Just came and got me out of bed. He's right in the house.
Okay, what happened?
His wife is in.
Okay.
What had this neighbor seen that he refused to go in? The shock of what the detectives saw next could be heard in the shift of their voice.
Anybody else in the house, Tom? Just you?
No, I got the kids. We're at the neighbor's house.
Okay, where's she at? Oh, okay. I got a female, mid-30s, early 40s, beaten to death. Her face is completely beaten in. We gotta clear this house. Just cover me. I'm gonna go upstairs. I gotta go up and clear it. She got blood on the wall, blood on the steps. There's blood all over up here. Looks like she was attacked in bed. I gotta clear over here. The kids' rooms are over here. There's blood in the kids' room. Okay, kids' rooms, this one's clear. There's blood all over. She's been dragged. Blood on the wall. Blood with a hole in the wall, looks like a face plant into the wall. All right, I'm gonna get a paramedic. Come in and verify.
This was when Allison Regan from the forensics team visited the crime scene and became the prime member in the investigation.
It is extremely bloody. Just watch the floor. There's blood there, blood up there. Follow me and just stay. I'll show you where stuff is. Try to stay to the right here a little bit. Her face is complete, yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
The sheriffs were horrified. This was a tight-knit community where most of them had children attending the same school as the Clayton kids. The fear was unmistakable in the voices of everyone around.
He say anything to you about anything?
When I was sound asleep, he knocked on the door. He asked my wife if we would take the kids. He said, "There, come with me, quick." I got in the truck and he flew back over.
Okay. Do you know, is there any problems here? Have you ever seen any problems here?
I haven't.
Okay.
The neighbor who had been there throughout ran anxiously back home to his wife and children because a violent maniac was on the loose.
As I'm going through the house, I can see where there'd been a violent assault on Kelly. There's blood splatter, there's pictures knocked off the walls. I could see where Kelly had been in her bedroom at the top of the stairs, and then a path down the hallway towards the children's bedrooms. Blood smear on the door handle to the child's room, and then going down the stairs, blood on the floor, damage to the walls where someone's either been forced through or fallen through, and then throughout the living area into the kitchen where Kelly was finally assaulted for the last time and killed. Severe damage to her face and head, so it appeared like a blunt force injury.
It appeared that Kelly endured a violent struggle in the final moments of her life, although no murder weapon was found. Outside the house, investigators discovered tire tracks. The detectives quickly removed the husband from the site, but grief and shock had left him erratic.
Tom, where were you when this all went down?
Playing poker with my buddy.
Okay. She was home alone?
I came home and my daughter said there was a robber in the house and she saw them.
Okay, come on out here, man. Come on out here. I want you to have a seat. You don't need to see that anymore, okay? Just take some deep breaths, okay? I know, yeah. Just take some deep breaths and stuff. Just try to stay calm.
Pass out.
Well, sit down then. Come on over here and sit down.
Yeah, I'm shaking.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. You want to sit down somewhere. Sit down.
I get that water.
Yeah, we'll get you a water. Take it easy, bud. Take it easy.
According to Tom, his daughter had seen the robber. After analyzing the crime scene, the investigators began piecing together a theory of what had transpired and forming a rough profile of the violent murderer. Could this be the work of someone close to the victim?
I'm wondering if he had a domestic with her. She face planted. Boom, boom. Then he puts her out in the kitchen. In her face, you can see how her face is beat in. Husband.
Just then, an emotional twist disrupted their focus. Kelly's grieving sister, Kim Bourgeois, arrived at the scene.
Here they come. You're gonna have to stop them.
Jeez.
The weight of her sorrow was palpable, but when she managed to regain her composure, she shared something that changed everything. She revealed that Tom, Kelly's husband, had kept a large sum of cash in the house, a detail that could point to financial motives. Adding to the intrigue, she disclosed that Tom had recently fired several employees at ServPro, the organization he worked for. Was it possible that one of them had sought revenge? The detectives shared their preliminary suspicions towards the husband Tom, but Kim quickly pushed back. This defense raised more questions than answers, and it was simply not adding up. While the details about cash and potential revenge were compelling, the robbery theory began to unravel. Burglary was a rarity in this quiet town, and the crime scene carried peculiar signs that didn't fit the profile of a simple break-in. What was really going on here? The bodycam footage that followed captured a pivotal moment, the police coming to a chilling conclusion. This wasn't a robbery at all.
The side door's open, that door's open. No forced entry on you on, okay?
We checked the safe. We checked her jewelry. There was no sign of theft at all. I think that was kind of the perspective was, okay, we have no evidence of a robbery, so what do we have?
What they had was a 7-year-old witness. Investigators now turned to Kelly Clayton's little girl, Charlie, who had seen her mother being beaten to death. Nothing could have prepared them for this heartbreaking interview.
Can you tell me what he looked like?
He was wearing jeans, a black long-sleeve shirt, and a mask.
On that doomed night, Charlie's father had tucked her in bed and left for Monday night poker with his friends. But then, how had the sickening tragedy played out?
Definitely lots more toys.
Check this out. You get to teach me how to tell time.
Police do the best they can to make the space comfortable for the 7-year-old child. There are blocks in the room.
Well, Charlie, do you know why we brought you here today? Okay, we're going to have to talk a little bit about last night, okay? Or if I ask a question that you're not certain about or that you don't understand, can you let me know? Okay, all right. Do you know what a truth and a lie is? What's a truth?
It means it really happened and a lie is that it didn't happen.
Right, very good. So,
I'm so smart.
As she began to speak of the night, her tone carried a chilling calm that made the investigators shift uneasily in their seats.
In the middle of the night, this guy came and started hitting my mom with like this pipe thingy.
okay. Can you tell me more about that?
There was blood everywhere.
Okay.
On my door, on the floor, not on the carpet though.
Charlie heard her mother's frantic footsteps rushing toward her room. The door handle turned as her mother screamed, "Run, Charlie, run!" Charlie followed her into the lobby. There he was. A bad man in a black ski mask hurting her mother. She saw the fight and returned to the room to protect her little brother.
And I thought she was dead when she was laying on the ground. And Daddy was out by the car. We were basically alone for like 20 minutes. Then he came home and he was like, oh my God. Because he saw my mom on the floor with blood all over.
Okay.
So here's a 7-year-old girl that saw one of the most traumatic things you're ever going to see in your life. And she's a smart girl, super smart girl. And I think her mind was trying to work through it and figure out, what did I just see?
As the interviewers gently guided Charlie through her memories, they sought any detail, no matter how small, that might bring them closer to identifying the perpetrator.
You remember what the thing looked like that he was hitting Mommy with?
A metal pipe,
How did the robber leave?
the garage.
And what did you see after that?
She was sort of suffering. I tapped her with the hockey stick. Then I hugged her leg.
Okay. All right. And where was Mom when you hugged her?
Laying down in the kitchen with blood all over.
Okay.
As Charlie's interview unfolded, a heavy sense of anxiety hung in the air, wrapping the adults around her with tense anticipation.
My first thought, Charlie has the most beautiful blue eyes. Most beautiful eyes. And all I could think of was what those eyes saw.
Then, the 7-year-old spoke one haunting line that unraveled the chilling truth behind Kelly's death.
What did the robber look like?
He looked like my dad. Could have been my dad, but he looked like my dad.
How did he look like your dad?
The mask and his shoes.
Have you seen anybody wear that mask before?
My dad.
Did the robber say anything?
But I didn't say anything because what if it was my dad? He could recognize his voice.
To the point where then she convinces herself that it could have been Daddy.
Yeah.
Because at first she's like, it couldn't be Daddy because who would take care of us?
As a law enforcement professional, we learn how to kind of compartmentalize, but at the same time, that's got to be really emotionally impactful on you.
It is. It stayed with me for a long time. It was heartbreaking to hear because she's processing it as a 7-year-old.
After answering the sheriff, Charlie let her emotions show for the first time in the interview.
It's about my mom and where is she at?
And she hasn't comprehended that her mother's dead, right? Then she wants to know where her mother is. Like, how is Mommy?
We need to find that out for you.
We'll find out for you, sweetie.
We'll find that.
Okay.
I said, I don't know, sweetie. I knew at that time, obviously, but she needed to be with family when she learned that, not with police officers.
As Charlie's heartbreaking interview concluded, the detectives sprung to action. From the start, their instincts had pointed to Tom, and now they had something solid to back it up.
When he rode to the police station, he also said, hey, you'll find out that I wasn't here. I was at a poker game.
Yeah. He doesn't know who did it, and that obviously it was a robbery, and that he was at a poker game, and he has a solid alibi.
The investigators brought Tom in and confronted him with a devastating claim. His own daughter had seen him ending Kelly's life. Tom was utterly shocked and adamantly denied the accusation. He insisted it was impossible and blamed the murder on the burglar. Once again, he clung to the same alibi he'd given from the start, that is the 911 call he made. He was not even in the same town. But the detectives weren't convinced. They revisited his 911 call. What they uncovered was chilling.
Is she breathing at all? Nothing?
No, trust me.
Okay, is she beyond CPR?
Yes. Just trust me. Come on, I'm here with my kids.
The 911 call to him was over, but the mic was still open. He was still on the line. The line was still open, and he went from this hysterical guy to being with his daughter in the house saying, did you see a robber?
Did you see Mommy? Did you see a robber? You saw them?
The call hadn't ended when Tom thought it had, and it captured a side of the Tom that sent shivers down their spine. Detectives questioned whether Tom was subtly planting the idea of a robber in his daughter's mind before the investigators even arrived. Who was Tom, really? A darker side of him was starting to show through the cracks. Until now, he was seen as a local hockey star with a magnetic personality.
They were superstars. Everybody was in awe over these guys.
The Agitator Award goes to Tom Clayton.
Clayton coming back at him.
Kelly and Tom had been married for 7 years. Their relationship began to bloom when she saw him in action on the field. He quickly became her dream boy. He was known for his temper and flirtatious demeanor.
He was instigator on the ice. Trash talking, that kind of thing.
When Tom ventured into the business world, he chose a ServPro franchise, and it turned out to be a surprising success. Tom was the kind of person everyone saw as a Casanova, with a big personality, bigger sense of humor, and endless flirtation. Traits that were considered to be charming, until someone ended up dead. However, investigators were far less impressed with him than his social circle seemed to be. From the moment they first laid eyes on him, something about him felt off.
Tom, where were you when this all went down?
Playing poker with my buddy.
Okay. She was home alone?
I came home and my daughter said there was a robber in the house.
Was Tom the true villain in Kelly's story? Tom was brought into the police barracks within hours of Kelly's murder. However, the evidence was going to fall far from their expectations.
Looking for anything from Kelly that might be on him, on his clothes, and there was nothing found.
Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Allie, given the way that you paint the picture of the scene, it would be impossible for the offender to not have gotten Kelly's blood on them.
Absolutely.
So he has no blood on him at all?
No.
He didn't have any blood on him, not even the amount one might expect from someone trying to save a loved one.
Tom doesn't in any way make contact with his deceased wife's body?
He didn't.
Despite the absence of any incriminating evidence against Tom, investigators still reached the conclusion that he was his wife's killer.
You have to look at the circumstantial stuff, like what does his daughter say? What does the crime scene look like? How was the person killed? All of those things in this case would suggest that this is a domestic homicide.
Then the investigators decided to act upon Charlie's identification and their own observations.
A mother of 2 is dead, and now her husband is charged with the murder. Thomas Clayton was arraigned in Caton Town Court Tuesday on a second-degree murder charge for the death of Kelly Clayton.
But there was a catch regarding Tom's arrest. Nobody found him shady, except for the investigators, not even Kelly's family. So, when investigators claimed they had found the killer in him, it hit hard. But before the community could fully process Tom as a killer, suddenly a new villain emerged. Accusations surfaced against the investigative team, claiming they were purposely trying to show Tom in a light of their choosing, and were hiding the side that did not align with their narrative. The investigators were criticized for quickly pointing fingers at a man, yet failing to realize they had no evidence to charge him. Tom also had no prior criminal record.
They've now charged Thomas Clayton with the murder of his wife, even though he had a rock-solid alibi.
The murder was a brutality of its own kind, leaving chaos in its wake. Was the testimony of a 7-year-old identifying a man in a ski mask truly enough for a conviction?
He called me and he had just said, that it wasn't him. He loved her. He never would do anything like that to hurt her.
The investigators had nothing to back their claim. No motive, no concrete evidence, not even a murder weapon that tied Tom to the crime scene. When the pressure started to build against them, the investigators revisited their claims, beginning from Tom's alibi. Tom was at the Miller's house in a nearby town just like every Monday. The investigators were in for a shock when they learned what this alibi was about to reveal. The Millers not only confirmed that Tom had been there playing poker with them, but also vouched for him as a man who could never hurt his wife. They were certain the police had the wrong man. However, the police's take on what the Millers had to say was different.
But But they're friends, right? I mean, we're not going to put a whole lot of, not necessarily put a whole lot of weight behind that. Offer anything up about his relationship with Kelly or anything going on in the household that they were aware of.
They kind of mimic what Kim said, is that they're kind of the all-American couple and they loved each other and were, madly in love.
The investigators didn't take their words at face value, but the evidence? That was something even they couldn't deny.
Yeah, from the burned dairy in South Corning, there was video of the vehicle going by at the time when...
Tom's vehicle.
Yes, a ServPro vehicle going by within the time frame of when he said he left the poker game to when he arrived at home and made the 911 call.
This was just the beginning of the realization for the investigators that they had, in fact, made a mistake. Tom also had a ServPro GPS tracker in his truck, which confirmed his exact timings. He left his house, went to the Millers, and then returned home at 12:35 a.m., from where he called 911 within 3 minutes of arriving. There were no gaps in his alibi. He never left the site of the Millers while playing, except for the brief washroom breaks. It would have been impossible for him to travel to another town, commit the murder, and return within that time frame. It did not look good for the investigators.
You always look at the people closest spouse. You always look at the surviving spouse first. But everything, kind of eliminates Tom from the picture at this point, right? He's got no blood on his clothing. He's got no physical injuries, which surely he would have had if, the way the crime scene looks, right? He's got witnesses who are saying he's with them during the time that you believed in, that you believed that the murder happened.
So amends were made to reverse the damage that had been done, and Tom was granted bail.
Clearly, police knew they still had a lot of work to do.
Tom now was out of the picture and seemingly free from the prospects of jail. Meanwhile, the investigative team was running on empty. They were nowhere near solving what was now the most horrifying crime this town had ever seen. The killer was out there, and all they had were dead ends. On one end, Tom was cleaning up his home and scrubbing away the bloodstains that still lingered on his walls, as if trying to erase the horrors of his past. On the other side, the detectives decided to start fresh. This time, they were not looking into the killer, but the victim, Kelly. Every text message, every phone call, every trace of her digital life was now under their microscope.
So I did Kelly's phone. I could see, her last text messages, but indicate that she had some other relationship, nothing between her and Tom that would make me think of domestic violence.
For Kelly's family, the silence during this time was unbearable. One loved one had been brutally murdered, while another had been arrested and later released. The grief remained raw, as if Kelly had been taken from them only yesterday.
And I wanted to hold her, but I couldn't.
And justice was nowhere in sight. Days passed by chasing ghosts. The investigators were questioning the family members. While Tom couldn't think of anyone who might want Kelly dead, his sister-in-law, Kim Bourgeois, offered a guess.
The Bourgeois family had told the police that there's a couple people from Tom's business who
that he had recently
fired, and you might want to look at them.
And those people certainly would have known, the kind of business that Tom did and whether or not he was going to have money in his house. Maybe looking for a way to get back just to steal his money.
Correct.
It was possible that one of the employees Tom had fired from ServPro planned to get revenge. But just when it seemed like the case was slipping into darkness, a single lead emerged and changed the entire direction of the case.
I remember my daughter coming to me saying, "Mom, Tom just told us he fired Michael Beard." And I remember us going, to the investigator and giving them that name.
Although Tom had fired him, Michael was an employee that even the family knew. He was Tom's right-hand man for everything he required. The investigators then decided to call Michael in for an interview.
One of the extraordinary things about Michael Beard is how incredibly ordinary he is. He had children in South Carolina. He also had a child in upstate New York. He was a primary breadwinner. He was living paycheck to paycheck. And so when he met Thomas Clayton, this local sports hero who had a business, he thought his life was changing for the better.
When Michael walked in, he was not only polite to the investigators, but also highly cooperative in their investigation. He described his relationship with Tom as strictly professional, though he acknowledged that Tom had always been kind to him.
And I would work hard for him. He would give me little rewards, like he brought me a bicycle because one job where we was working at, I ended up catching a cab. So I told him like I couldn't afford the cab every day to get to this job. So the deal was to him was, if he brought me a bike, to pay that back, I would just have to work hard for him. I said, well, you know, I'm doing that already. And one day he came back with a bicycle.
Not just Tom, he also told them he had a distant but cordial relationship with Kelly as well. Michael expressed his sorrow over the loss of her life.
She was a pretty cool person. It's been a few times where she went to go pay bills or something and the kids didn't want to go. So she asked if I mind watching them for her until she come back. I said, hey, that give me time to quit working, plus I'm getting paid. So, you know, we was pretty cool.
Not only did Michael tell the investigators this accusation was not true, but this dismissal from work also marked the beginning of his downfall.
I spoke in my defense. There was no proof of me drinking on the job. I mean, I do drink, but I don't drink on the job.
What state did it leave you in? You lost your job.
I was basically in broke.
And the worst part for Michael was that Tom was not only his ex-boss, he was also the landowner of the house he rented for $1,000 a month.
This was a guy who was living hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck, when he had a job. Now, without a primary job, a man who was struggling is now really beginning to struggle.
In one clean sweep, he was not only out of any source of income, he was also now behind on rent. But Michael Beard's misfortune didn't end there. Tom turned out to be his true obstacle, a rich, narcissistic man who seemed unaffected by everything.
According to Beard, that Thomas had started eviction proceedings against him, and he had to move out.
What Michael Beard did not know was that the story he narrated to the investigators had rage, motive, and hatred, everything that Kelly Clayton's crime scene had screamed. Since Michael was being cooperative, the investigators decided to strike while the iron was hot.
He's very cooperative, claimed to have no ill will towards Tom or Kelly. And he gave consent for his phone. I picked it up at the sheriff's department, and they're like, we don't think he's involved. So when you get around to this phone, take a look. But I'm like, I gotta get on this today.
Detective Allison was not ready for the twisted secrets hiding in Michael's phone.
When I initially populate the report, there's a lot of deleted material, deleted text messages. Initially didn't see the phone calls. He had deleted that. But the one thing I did see was some powering events. So as I'm looking at the timeline of the phone, I can see when the phone's powered on and powered off. And there's a portion of time there when I know Kelly made her last text message, and I know when Tom made that 911 call. And within that time frame, I have Michael Beard powering his phone off and then back on afterwards. So I was like, man, I don't know if it is anything, but I better let someone know.
Had Michael been at the crime scene at the time of the murder? The next day, the detectives were fueled with the confidence of closing in on their possible suspect. But they were about to receive a call that was going to change everything they thought they knew about this twisted mystery. Lucky Miller, the woman who was playing poker with Tom on Monday night, rang up the police. She told them how earlier that day she had run into Tom at a local casino.
I came down the escalator and I hear, Lucky. Lucky. He's like, hi, Lucky. He goes, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I was going to take her away on a second honeymoon. And I'm like, Tom? I don't know what to believe.
Lucky and Greg had defended Tom with all their might, but her recent interaction with Tom left a worm of doubt in her mind. As she was unwinding back at home, something struck her memory.
And she says she's up in the shower, and she's thinking, and she says, oh my goodness, Thomas used my phone to place a call during the poker game.
This is her cell phone?
This is her cell phone.
Does Tom not have his own cell phone?
He had his own cell phone. He said his phone was in the truck.
He walked up and asked me if he could borrow my phone. I'm like, yeah, sure.
As she recalled this detail, she checked her phone and the call logs, only to find nothing. The lack of any records seemed more suspicious than finding any calls or texts. Because if Tom had taken Lucky's phone, why had he done so? And if he called someone, why on earth would he delete the number?
Listen, maybe it is plausible. Maybe his battery went dead, or maybe he didn't have service, right? There's reasons for that, but who does he call? Like, what are the records? When you finally get those records back, who does he make that call to?
We know that he placed a call from Lucky Miller's phone at 10:53.
When they pulled the records, they found Tom had dialed the number from Lucky's phone twice in the middle of the game. And when the reports revealed the name of the receiver, it shocked the detectives to their core.
He calls a guy named Michael Beard.
So what do you come to learn about him?
That he's been fired a couple times for stealing. He has been involved with the criminal justice system in South Carolina.
Michael Beard was Tom's ex-employee at ServPro. He had also fired him over drinking at work, but he also dialed his number hours before his wife's murder. The facts were dizzying.
Anytime something needed to come up, he called me, I would go fix that.
You like his go-to guy if you need something done, his handyman. How would he describe?
He described me as being a reliable worker. I'm the first one he called. If he needed someone to stay longer, he knew I would stay longer. First there, last to leave.
The next day, Michael was interviewed again, this time under increased pressure. Meanwhile, another guest was brought in for separate questioning. His girlfriend's account would help verify the details of each story Michael had practiced. They also brought in a specialized interviewer familiar with Michael's background in narcotics, hoping to leverage that history during questioning.
They get a feeling that something's not quite right here. But also we learned that Michael Beard has been fired from both businesses that Thomas was an owner or participating in.
ServPro and a business called Paul Davis.
Yes. We learned that he's got money trouble.
The financial crunch was pointing to a dark corner of the case that investigators had yet to examine.
Thomas fires him more than once, apparently. He worked for him in two different companies.
Mm-hmm.
But he rents him an apartment.
Yes.
And now, of course, he can't pay his rent because he got fired.
Correct.
And he's a thief.
And he's a thief, yep.
And this is who Tom is calling shortly before his wife is murdered.
And so Tom's name was back on the list of the suspects, and this time in bold. The case was now steering investigators into unexplored territory.
We couldn't get rid of the thought that Michael Beard somehow he's involved.
Technology had once provided the strongest evidence to rule Tom out as a suspect, but now it was the very tool investigators were using to build a case against him.
So we were looking at not only the physical devices, the cell phones, doing the downloads from those, but we also had the cell phone records from the service providers, which provided thousands of points of data to be able to connect Beard to Clayton. We could see patterns of behavior and get some of those details because even the messages were cryptic. So we could see that there was a previous occasion when Tom Clayton was out of town that Beard powers his phone off, goes out to Clayton.
He goes to the house.
And on his way back, sends a text message, call me when you can, to Tom Clayton. It's only a few days before the homicide occurred.
This was far from the end of the deadly collaboration between Michael and Tom. There was something dark brewing between the two.
In the week before the homicide, before the murder, Beard and Clayton were communicating. There were calls in the morning, calls in the afternoon, they were texting. Beard owed Clayton rent, but it didn't seem to be this is the guy that was just fired.
The investigators' instincts were screaming that there was a conspiracy, but this time they had to reach the bottom of this mystery on their own. They knew the route Tom had taken the night Kelly Clayton was murdered because of his GPS tracker. However, that afternoon included a stop at a gas station, and that is where they zeroed in.
And he says, hey, I need to use your phone because something's wrong. I'm not getting good cell coverage.
But we know his phone is on and working because we can see that from the data.
And the call that he made from M&M Auto, he places it to Michael Beard.
I'm thinking, what's going on here?
They were closing in on the depths of the conspiracy when During the interrogation, Holly, Michael's girlfriend, revealed that the couple had been harboring a sinister secret.
She tells them that, hey, we were hard up for money. We were going to get evicted.
He said, you know what happened?
And during that time, she reveals that there was an agreement between Tom and Beard to kill Kelly.
After the girlfriend revealed the truth to the investigators, it did not take too long for Michael's story to fall apart.
He, throughout the entire interview, became more and more emotional, started exhibiting signs of like nervousness, like his stomach was growling. Signs that, in my experience, are very typical of somebody that's guilty of something and just kind of waiting and stressing about the truth actually coming out. And he kind of put his head down, and I was close to him, sitting in front of him. I was like, Mike, is $10,000 the reason that you killed Kelly? And he kind of paused for a second, then responded, yeah, that's why I did it.
In a confession, Michael revealed to the investigators that Tom had offered him the money in return for burning his house down after killing Kelly. Investigators had previously found gas in the garage earlier, but its purpose had eluded them. Now the first thought that struck the detectives was, were they planning to let the children perish alongside their mother in the fire? Fortunately, that wasn't the case. The initial plan was for the children to be at Kelly's sister, Kim's house on that fateful day. Michael disclosed to the investigators he did not set the house on fire because he had gotten scared after killing Kelly Clayton.
I think the homicide itself was more brutal than he had anticipated, and he said in his words that he got scared.
Everything fell right into place when Michael showed them the spot where he had discarded the murder weapon.
There was a piece in the house that matched the maul handle that was found off the side of the road here. The maul is like a sledgehammer, but there's no actual sledgehammer head on it, so it's just a handle.
It was positive for DNA of Kelly Clayton and blood still on the murder weapon. There were shards of that same handle at the scene.
He also showed them to the puddle in which he had thrown the house keys that Tom had provided him with. Other than that, he also pointed them to the clothes he wore while committing the crime. The evidence was solid, and so was Michael's motive. But the same was not true for the mastermind of this heinous crime. The investigators wondered why Tom had orchestrated this brutal act. Was it a marriage that had turned sour? Was there an extramarital affair? What had led to the pure hatred the crime scene displayed so vividly? To uncover the motive, investigators turned to a third party, a man who was friends with Beard and had been offered a role in this brutal conspiracy.
He asked me about doing the job. I'm thinking maybe it might be some type of drug deal or something. As we start writing out, Mike's talking about the job, he's saying he's getting Lincoln Street brand, he's saying I'll pay you $500. I'm like, all right. And along the way, he says, I'm at the kill a bitch. I do remember him saying that.
Shortly after Beard confessed, he was arrested. In the end, investigators realized that their collective instinct about Tom since the day of the crime had been right all along. However, when they looked into Tom with a fresh perspective, they realized there was an even darker side than their initial perception of him.
In subsequent interviews with persons that Tom had had affairs with.
Hold on, so you actually learned that Tom is having extramarital affairs, plural, more than one?
Yes. Yeah, he had several of them.
When I look at it, he's just so self-absorbed. He's the only person he cares about, right?
He's thrown out 1,000 lines and getting 10 bites.
And again, not a big town.
No.
People kind of know each other. People talk.
Yep.
A lot of them would just say, well, that's just Tom. He hits on everyone, right?
He hits on everyone.
Yeah.
Tom was known to be passionate as a man and a sports person, but his planning was that of a shrewd, cold-blooded killer. He had meticulously planned his wife's murder for months, including gradually pushing Michael into financial desperation to manipulate him into becoming a part of his sinister scheme. However, the investigators were still lacking a solid motive. When they looked into Tom's finances, they uncovered an ugly secret. Tom was apparently a successful businessman, but despite this, his finances were still running dry, and he was failing to sustain the lifestyle he was used to.
There was a substantial life insurance policy that Tom had on Kelly. We determined throughout the investigation that it had actually been recently upped.
This evil conspiracy had been cooking in Tom's head for at least a year, at which time he had increased the life insurance payout on Kelly. And within a year, he was ready to reap the fruit. However, he was cunning enough to cover his tracks well, because it was not just Kelly he had increased the insurance on.
A year before Kelly's death, Thomas Clayton doubled the family's life insurance policy. His life insurance policy was increased to $2 million. Kelly's was increased to $1 million.
Tom believed Kelly had spent a significant amount of his money, and for him, the marriage was already over. He openly spoke about his frustrations with Kelly and made it clear he was done with the relationship. However, he confided in several people that there was only one reason holding him back from filing for divorce.
He made the statement more than one time that he couldn't afford a divorce.
I can't leave my wife for you because my
She'll
wife will
take
clean
everything.
me out.
Yeah.
The investigators had won against all odds in this twisted case, and there was just one challenge that remained. They needed to build the strongest possible case, and they could not afford to repeat their last mistake with Tom.
But first, we had to prove Beard actually did the murder.
So we go back to the crime scene.
The DNA that was collected from the crime scene was of the victim, but they also found traces of Michael Beard's blood. Apart from this, a dramatic sequence of proof came from a CCTV recording from a storage unit beside a nearby ServPro. The cruel plan was laid bare in this footage. On the evening of the murder, they found a red Dodge van arriving at the ServPro. Shortly after, it left the premises, followed closely by a ServPro vehicle. The location tracked through the phones showed that the ServPro vehicle left for a gym where Charlie was performing. In the meantime, the red van reached Michael's residence. The ServPro vehicle was driven by Tom, and the red van had Michael in the driver's seat. This proved Michael and Tom had been together before the murder, hatching and conniving. But according to the plan, what was to happen next? Tom had an escape plan that was beyond shocking.
Attorney that's representing Tom Clayton comes forward and said, hey, there's a bag, and we'd like to retrieve that if that's okay. It's in a truck that Tom had possessed.
What's in the bag?
About $100,000 in cash, Tom's passport, and the kids' passports.
But not Kelly's passport.
Not Kelly's passport.
Tom was going to leave the country along with his children after he got his wife brutally killed. However, the perfectly evil plan failed. After gathering astonishing information about Tom's conspiracy, the investigators arrested him.
But you still got a problem. There's no physical evidence connecting him to the crime. He's actually granted bail.
Yes.
Which is also pretty unusual in a murder case.
Yes.
I felt so much.
The investigators had charged Tom with first-degree murder, but they were concerned that he might win his case in court and regain custody of his children, who were staying with Kim at the time.
He did not kill his wife. He didn't hire anybody to kill his wife.
The long-dreaded day, filled with both anxiety and anticipation, had finally arrived.
After more than 75 witnesses and 500 pieces of evidence, the jury began deliberating yesterday around 10:30 a.m.
Thomas Clayton was found guilty as charged. It came as a huge relief to Kelly's family and the investigation team who had worked tirelessly to find justice for her.
I told my sister from the night she was murdered that we would not stop fighting for her. We would not stop fighting for justice for her.
Tom was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, and the same went for Michael Beard.
You know, if this crime had been committed 20 years ago, perhaps he would have gotten away with it. Fortunately, we had all this digital evidence, we had all this GPS evidence, we had all this modern technology.
DNA.
Kim later adopted them, and they continued to live under her care. Following the tragedy, Tom and Kelly's children initially found refuge with Kim Bourgeois. But as time passed, Kim legally adopted them and they found their home with her. For Kelly's family, the verdict brought justice, but no solace. The pain of losing her was compounded by the haunting realization that they had never truly known the man they once called family.
I stood there as her matron of honor and smiled and watched her marry him. Now you find out he is a monster, a sociopath.
Charlie believed she had seen Daddy's eyes in the perpetrator, but it was not Tom. Did the children instinctively feel the upcoming chaos coming for their mother, unlike other people around Kelly? Was Tom's evil plan so perfect that he would not have been caught had it not been for the digital proof? Let us know in the comments section below. And if you found today's video interesting, please consider subscribing to our channel, hit that like button, and share our videos. Also, if you have any crime story that you would like us to cover, leave us a message in the comment section below.